baseball, not always the best team wins, right? You got to still go out there and get it done.
Welcome in, everyone. This is Baseball Talk with Youth Baseball Midwest. I'm filling in for Brian French today. I'm Dave Wiggins. I am your fill-in host. Here today, we're joined by, I'm going to try to say this the best I can, the guru, Kevin Moulder with Prep Baseball Report Missouri, and head coach of Staley High School, Coach Dionandre Josenberger. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Glad to be on.
Doing good, Coach Wiggins.
Awesome. Good to hear. Well, we are in week 2 of high school baseball here in Missouri. A lot of programs had tryouts last week. Some programs started with practice. Coach Josenberger, I know you at Staley definitely had tryouts last week. Let's just kind of start off there. Tell us how those went. You know, it's always tough to cut kids. It's always tough to have those conversations. How'd everything go last week for the Falcons?
You know, that's always an exciting week. It's always a stressful week, especially for our players and their families, and even us coaches. It's never a fun time. But what I tell our kids is every day is a tryout, right? So we don't want to put a whole lot of emphasis on just 1 or 2 days or 3 days of workouts. It's everything that you've done since the season ended last year until the first day of spring practice. So I feel like we got the right guys, obviously having some tough conversations. Our junior class is a really big class, so we had to make some tough cuts when it comes to juniors from kids that, have done everything you asked them to do, but the numbers and the positions and the size and strength just don't line up at this time. So those are always hard.
What is your philosophy on putting juniors on junior varsity? How do you go about that? And does it change year to year?
I'm fine with. I mean, honestly, at a program like ours, you're an elite player if you get on varsity before your junior year and become a starter, right? That's how we kind of do it. So we'll be pretty junior heavy on our JV this year, and we had a lot of JV juniors on JV last year that are now making the jump to varsity. So um, it's really we start projecting our guys as juniors for varsity this year and next year, and that's how we usually approach our cuts. If we've got some sophomores or freshmen that are equal or passing them up, then we got to make some tough decisions when it comes to juniors. But we're probably always going to be fairly junior heavy in our program on JV just because where we're at as a program.
That makes sense. And that's to be expected at a larger and successful school like yourself, coming off a state Final Four finish, essentially a second place finish in state. Um, when you are determining, say you have player A and player B, and they're both in the same class, they're both about the same talent level, are there other factors like off-season workout attendance, who they are in the classroom? Like what other kind of factors into that, and what kind of puts one over the edge, if that makes sense, because it is highly competitive at your school when it comes to even making a team.
Yeah, we break it down into 3 different categories, honestly. We do overall athleticism, so we measure strength testing, broad jump, speed, all those different things that are non-baseball related. And we also break it down into baseball skills, obviously, the X and velos, the metrics, and all those different things, positional metrics and mechanics. And then we break it down into the intangibles, which are character, grades, community service commitment, off season participation. And so basically that's how we come down to our decisions. And we talk about that with our parents in the meetings leading up to tryouts. So they have a pretty good idea of, that they're getting a fair shot and that we're measuring multiple things. Because as you know, as a coach, um, sometimes it's a culture fit, right? It may be a kid willing to accept a different role and one maybe not. So it just comes down to a variety of different things. So we try to have as many metrics and variables as possible to make the best decisions. Of course, we don't always get it right, but I feel comfortable where we are.
Well, I feel like the 7 weeks leading up to the season that Mish has granted us now has really given us an opportunity to quote unquote extend the tryout process. I know we can't really say that it's a tryout. It's not mandatory, but it does give us a much better picture of who these kids are in a baseball setting instead of just a 1 week tryout where, maybe a kid had a bad day, maybe a kid had a bad week, maybe a kid had a really good week. Some programs they use 3 days for tryouts. Some use 4 or 5, depending on the the evaluation process. And I've always found when I was at Webster, we would do measurables, not really for the kids that we were pretty sure would make the team. We didn't feel like those meant as much to us when it came to playing the game at the high school level, but it really did give us a leg to stand on when we were explaining to a young man why he didn't make the team or why we were explaining to his parents, this is where you fell short. And if you don't have those measurables, if you don't have the data to explain why you let a kid go, it can be a tough conversation with mom, with dad, with the AD if it gets to that point. Have you encountered anything like that? I know this you haven't been at Staley too long, but have you encountered anything of that nature?
Knock on wood, not yet. I feel like we do a great job of communicating with our players in advance, kind of giving them insight. One other thing that we did is we did a s- a assessment. All the kids that wanted to try out had to fill out a Google Doc with assessment to see where they fit, what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were, how they could contribute to the program, what team that they thought their abilities fit on. So that's another thing that we do just overall to support a conversation piece with our players. Um, and I think it really helps. We also meet with every kid individually, whether they make the team or don't make the team. And I think having those face to face conversations with players goes a long way instead of sending an email or the text or posting a list. They get some insight. And then the other thing that we do is for kids that don't make the team, they can request a formal written evaluation, and I'll give that to them in writing with all of their data and metrics and notes and things for improvement and suggestions. So we try to cover all the bases. Of course, it's still not easy, like I said, when all these kids have done everything that you ask them to do. But I will tell you this: at our school, most of the time it comes down to strength, size, and strength. And all the cuts that we made this year that weren't baseball skills related came down to what you've done in the weight room and what your body looks like.
So,
Coach Josenberger, I'm sure Kevin agrees with me. That is about as comprehensive and holistic of an approach as I've ever heard when it comes to the tryout process. And I hope people heard that loud and clear, especially the ones screaming that high school baseball is political or you cut my son because you don't like him. I feel like parents and even club directors and coaches for that matter don't understand the legwork and the back end work that's done before tryouts even starts. We are trying to be as fair as we can possibly be as high school coaches, and Coach Josenberger just explained that to a T. That is outstanding stuff. Kevin, thoughts on that?
no, that was phenomenal. I've always thought that high school baseball coaching is the most difficult level to coach. From the baseball standpoint, just kind of going through some of the stuff that Coach Josenberg just detailed, really impressive. And the whole time I'm just sitting over here thinking, I'm like, you dropped the, well, we don't always get it right. And I'd push back on that a little bit, like as a guy that does these, rankings, and I'll certainly say, well, I don't always get it right. But, you know, the other thing is kids change in a hurry too. And, you might have made a decision last week that was accurate last week, and next year that might be totally different. Someone that gets cut could come back and take some of the stuff that you pointed out, or even if it's just metric stuff, or hey, he weighs 145 pounds right now as a sophomore, as a junior, and then something lights a fire on him, and he comes back as a different guy, and going through some adversity and going through stuff like that kids change, and you see kids come the next year and make a team. So I've seen that happen. Obviously, I'm looking at it from 30,000 feet from the whole state, but I'm always the first to say when I do these rankings, hey, they're ranked, they're right, but that'll last for about 3 weeks, and then these kids change so fast, and guys get complacent, or guys start to work hard, or guys get hurt, guys grow 4 inches, etc. It can all change in a hurry, so you better keep working, especially at a program like Staley. Coach also is very fortunate, and it's a blessing and a curse. You deal with the pains of last week. I'm sure there's plenty of programs that are looking for players to come to tryouts, not only just wishing they could cut players, not wanting to cut the players, but wishing that numbers were an issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say
Absolutely.
the
Go
one
ahead.
thing is parents get all fired up, but my mindset, like I told you before, is every day's a tryout. Even when you're on the team, you're trying out. You're trying to try out for opportunities and trust within your coaching staff. So it's just not a one-day process. But also, here's what I realize is that a kid's not going to get bigger, stronger, faster, or become a better kid in one day, right? So everybody freaks out that how quickly people make cuts. Like we cut some kids the first day, but they just had no opportunity. But we also did our due diligence, and we had metrics and numbers on all of those kids the first day. And so we did make some cuts the very first day. And everybody freaks out. Wow, man, you guys are cutthroat. No, I feel like I know my players really well and have pretty good relationships with them. And anybody that waits to the last minute to do tryouts without the due diligence in the Midwest, because you never know what the weather's going to be,
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that. So anytime it's warm and we can get outside and we can get home the first times, or home the second, or 30-yard dash, or whatever it may be, we take advantage of that ahead of time, because last week we had to spend 3 days indoors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And coach hit the nail on the head there when I asked him what some of the factors were that would put player A over player B. And it is the attendance in the weight room. It is the physicality that you need to possess to play high school baseball nowadays. And we just hope, we talk about it all the time on this show. I've talked about it on Baseball 101 with Nathan Yamnitz, a strength performance coach here in the St. Louis area. Better, stronger, faster. If you are wanting to play high school baseball, let alone varsity baseball in this day and age, you've got to be physical. You've got to be athletic. We're asking our athletes to play the game more athletically now. We're not asking for robotic movements. We're not as mechanically focused as we used to be, and we are letting them use their bodies in a more physical and explosive way. Just not enough can be said when it comes to the physicality that one must possess to be successful at the varsity level now. And obviously, Kevin, you see from, let's say, the underclass, say a kid that pops at the underclass, what you're looking at is, okay, what's he going to do the next year when he shows up to my upperclass event, right? Are his numbers going to be higher? Are his metrics going to be the same, or are they going to be higher? Because, that's kind of how you project, right? Is you're looking at a kid now, but you're not necessarily ranking him for the now. You need to also rank him for the future. I think that's where you have a very, very tough job.
Yeah, it's a blended approach. And I've always felt like about the time they reach their sophomore year, you start to get a decent idea. Their freshman year, you get some guys that are a little out ahead physically just because they've developed a little earlier. And then the sophomore year, it starts to come. And, coach kind of said it, every day is a tryout. And, I feel like the guys that are super successful, and I see this at the very top, and I'm so thankful that the new college recruiting rule, where these kids can't get recruited now until August 1st, so they're going to be junior year. But the ones that are most successful never feel like they've made it, in my opinion. So, like, if you get ranked in the top 10, or you make the Staley varsity team as a sophomore or whatever, the second you think you're good, or that you think you've made it, is you're going to be passed really soon. That's the danger zone, is And I unfortunately see that all the time. But am so thankful that the early commit is gone, because that unfortunately happened a decent amount. And it's a combination of that, and it's hard to project, ninth and 10th graders, what they're going to look like when they're, a freshman in college. So, but yeah, you're dead on. We just went through the all of our preseason workouts, and I love, going through the month of February, because I just feel like, man, I get to see all these players on all sides of the state, and they're coming off their off season. So right now they should be hitting about their peak physical. They've been in the weight room, and you definitely get some, oh, wow. That kid was 82 last time I saw him, and now he's 88, 89. Or, you can apply that to any position. But it is fun to see these kids. Is just right before we hand them over to you guys.
Yeah, before we jump into the preseason All-State, one name that we're talking underclass today, one name that jumps off the page when you see Staley baseball is Crew Patrick. And Coach, I just wanted you to talk about Crew and, kind of what Kevin said about, is Crew the type of player that's satisfied that he was a varsity impact guy as a freshman, or are you seeing this kid, is he going to make a name for himself, not just at Staley High School, but here in the Midwest over the next couple of years?
Oh, he's definitely never satisfied. All right. We just had a conversation the other day about making sure he allows his body to be able to rest, because he's a goer and a doer and a worker. And sometimes, there has to be some balance. And I mean, he'll come from practice, go to a workout session, come home, eat dinner, and he'll hit in his basement till 10:30 at night, 6 days a week, which is awesome.
Wow.
But he also still needs to recover, right? So,
Right.
but I'd rather have that guy, right, and dial it down than the other way around. He's definitely a hardworking kid. He's a humble kid, very, very coachable, wants to get better. And, I'll argue with Kevin and those guys that they got him ranked third, which is really good. But I would put him second just because of the two-way factor, right? Cam Gillespie's really, really good, but he's not going to do what Crew does on the bump.
Kevin, your thoughts on Crew?
And that's I love those comments. And that's having fun. And I'm always the first to say, if we're doing rankings, like everyone's going to kind of have their, if us three were in charge of the rankings and we're doing the top 100, they're going to look similar, but they're not going to look exactly the same. And there's so many factors in this. And I will be quick to point out that I'm a huge Crew Patrick fan. We got him ranked third, and I'm also quick to point out he's ranked 70th nationally. So sometimes people get really caught up in hung on hey, why am I not ranked? I'm like, hey, we got you ranked in the top 100 in the country. So that's what we think of you. So, but to Crew, if I'm Crew, and this is the way I would think. It's I can't believe this son of a gun doesn't have me ranked number one, because that's how you should think. If you're worth anything at all, that's how you need to be thinking. It's you always try to find something to kind of to fuel your fire. In my opinion, this 2028 class is special. I've been doing prep baseball for 5 years. This is the best class that I have seen at the sophomore level, comparing them to the age level. Obviously, the seniors, if they played the sophomores, would most likely win in a game. But I think this is the most talented class that I've seen come through the state of Missouri, this sophomore class. So it is ridiculously deep. And you got some super high-end stuff at the top. Obviously, if we're talking about Keelan Zumwalt, who was over at Armoka, as a sophomore, there's all sorts of leverage in that swing, and he's already producing exit velos and the 108s, and watching him take on-field BP, last August, he's putting them in the parking lot on the first swing of BP, just doing stuff that is just not normal. And then he can also get up on the mound and pitch it pretty good from the left side, even though I project him more as a positional player, but that is in the back pocket there for a kid like Keelan. And Cam, and really we could go through the whole list here. I'm not going to, but Cam in particular. Sorry, I'm getting froze here on my deal. Cam's just such an athlete, and a lot of it is just projection, and also kind of hearing from the scouts and just type of athlete he is. That's a 6'6" runner, left-handed hitter, and a true shortstop. There's some exciting pieces to like about his game, and you can keep going down the list, and I will quickly point out to kids like Cam, Keelan, Crew. Some guy ranked 51st is probably feeling like, man, I got to work so much harder to catch up to these guys. And that stuff happens too. There'll be some kid that's not on this list or is buried on this list that will end up taking a major jump and, one day be pitching 93, 97 with a wipeout breaking ball and make the big leagues. So, it is kind of fascinating to follow.
Yeah, when you see a hitter like Keelan who possesses what most would believe to be professional traits as a 16-year-old, that's it. It's hard to rank anybody above that, especially when he does show two-way potential. Obviously his older brother Brooks is a heck of a player. He's a senior, and their dad being involved with the Royals. You assume Keelan's had pretty much every opportunity possible to become a very good baseball player. And they even have a younger brother who I believe is a 7th grader who is also a specimen, who looks just like the other two. So that's an exciting baseball family right there for sure.
Yeah,
it definitely is. And some of these traits, like, you can't coach. Like, if you're going to be at the top of these rankings, and I say this not an unfortunate, but just like some kids are just really gifted. And all of these kids towards the top, it's beyond like they work hard. That some of them are just super talented too, and they work hard. So it's a combination of all of those.
One of the things when you have a kid like that is it's our responsibility. There's still a lot of things that he can clean up, right? That he's got away with athletically, just because he's so much more gifted. So we work on those every single day. And one of the things is I throw him out in center field occasionally too, to let him run around and figure out that, because you just never know, right? So one of our jobs is try to get him as complete of a player as we can by the time that he leaves our program. So we throw him out in center field, have him catch some fly balls. We work a little bit of shortstop. We really trying to work on having him field the ball out front a little bit more and clean up some mechanical stuff. But the overall tools are definitely off the chart.
Absolutely. And Crew's an interesting case, and not just Crew, but the type of player that Crew is. So he's obviously a two-way player for you. And I like to hear you got him out in center field a little bit, but such a dynamic player, he's going to create a huge impact for you on the mound. What type of role do you find for him the day after he pitches or the day before? So obviously he can play the left side of the infield. Maybe you throw him out in center field. Maybe you play him at first base. And you never know. Like, I always tell these kids, like, all right, you are – the best, you're the man at your school, or you're the man in your city, and then you end up going into pro ball, or let's say you take a more traditional path and you go straight to college. Okay, you're the best player on your high school team. You bat third, you play short, you play whatever. Well, now you get to college, and there's a 21 or 22-year-old that's an all-conference player, and he's playing your position, and you're the new kid on the block, the 19-year-old. You better have a new position to play if you want to be on the field as a freshman. So no matter how good you are, versatility in being able to play multiple positions will help you advance, whether that's in college baseball, high school baseball, and certainly in pro ball.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. We just had that conversation with him the other day about that, and we told him we was going to try to manage it like we did with Brody last year. After a day he throws, maybe play him at first base or DH or whatever, and then be really strategic about when he throws on the during the week. Like we know he's going to throw next Saturday, the second game of a doubleheader, so he don't have to worry about pitching the first game and then throwing. So he'll have some recovery time going through the rest of the weekend. So just things like that we have to be cautious of.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously the kids like Crew are going to be headed to big time college programs if they don't get drafted out of high school. And, college coaches have been very forthright in saying that they might recruit 7 shortstops from seven different high schools, and they can't all play shortstop. So being able to play multiple positions is obviously, Coach, you have his best interest at heart there. You're not just thinking about the now for Crew. You're also thinking about his future, and you're wanting to make sure that he's a complete, well-rounded player for when he does get to that next level. And that's commendable because, really all you have to do as a high school baseball coach in a lot of people's minds is win baseball games. But we know as guys who are leading young men, not just baseball players, there's so much more to it than that. And, I like that that's the approach you're taking.
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes one of the reasons honestly I got back in the coaching high school ball was I think sometimes we can get tunnel vision because the season's so quickly, and we want to be able to win games, and we don't think about overall development, and that's not fair to our players, right? So I try to bring the development aspect into it, and if you do that, the winning will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
Kevin, keep a big picture approach. The little things tend to work out, right?
Absolutely. So one final note about the Staley Falcons before we move on. How are you feeling about the season, Coach? Obviously, you're in an insanely difficult conference. Your path to another Final Four is going to be very, very difficult. How does this year's team measure up to last year's team, and are there similar expectations that have been set?
I don't think our expectations ever change, right?
Good.
First off, we want to win our conference. If we win our conference, you've done something, right? You've won and accomplished something. So that's what we try to do, and then win a district championship, and then get to the state tournament and see what happens from there, right? But this team's a lot different. We don't have as high end of arms, but we actually have more arms, so we can mix and match a little bit more than I think. I love where we are. People aren't expecting us to do a whole lot because they think we've lost a ton of pieces, and our guys feed off of that. We will play a little bit different style of ball this year. Be a lot more aggressive on the bases, maybe a lot more small ball. But we got a lot of athletic pieces and a lot of defensive flexibility. Like I said, we've got some good arms, and we got more of them than we had last year. Last year, we pretty much were about 4 or 5 deep, which, when you got a kid that's going to throw a complete game every day, that extends your pitching staff. We don't have that guy this year, but I like where we are, and I like what our guys are doing, and I kind of like the role that we're in right now that people don't really expect us. But I tell people all the time, we've got enough talent, and if things don't go well, it's probably my fault. So I own that.
I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I still have high expectations for Staley, and you'll find that out next week when we drop our rankings. But you keep playing that card, and I think people are mistaken if they are counting you guys out. I do understand that, Brody Earlbeck is not there anymore, so that would be like an easy assumption to make. Well, they can't be as good. And any team would want to have Brody Earlbeck back, but I like the strength in numbers, and there's an awful lot of talent there. So Who are a couple of the arms that are you expecting to step up this year? We just talked about Crew. Obviously, he'll have to play a bigger role this year on the mound. But beyond Crew, who else are we looking at?
We've got 4 seniors. Malachi Coleman, which is a name you know, he's been nursing a hamstring injury, so we're kind of nursing him back. He's kind of on the shelf right now. Marcus Newcomer is another senior that's kind of burst on the scene. He just got an offer from William Jewell a couple weeks ago. Not very many people know about him. Kason Willenborg, who missed the whole last year with an arm injury. He's a senior. He's back. And then we've got a couple other arms. Connor Jones, who's a junior that made a big jump this past summer, plays for Engage Athletics. Got another little left-handed pitcher, but got the best pitchability in our staff. He's going to sit, low 80s, but he knows how to pitch, can get people out. Aiden Boyer. We've got another kid named Nate David Hernandez, who is our shortstop. He'll be able to come in relief, maybe do some closing stuff. He's a move-in from the Kansas side this year. So those guys, that's about 6 or 7 dudes I just named right there that are going to be in the mix for it. I feel like I'm missing somebody else, but I think those guys are kind of on the scene, and those guys have been working their tails off. We've got a couple more guys. One thing that was missed from last year's team is we only had 4 returning varsity players from last year's team. Everybody else were JV guys. So I think people miss that point of it. Of course, we had Crew starting, who was a freshman, so he wasn't there. And then the last month of the season, we had Brady Nelson, who's a sophomore, whose body's changed a lot. He's going to catch and play some outfield. He's running a lot better. He played the last month of the season. Our right fielder was a JV guy. Our left fielder was a JV guy. Our shortstop was a JV guy. Our second baseman was a JV guy. So, all those guys were JV guys, right? So the thing about it, you asked earlier about the junior part, I think being down there makes these guys hungry. Sometimes you lack experience, but the hunger that they have to be able to show that they deserve to be there is underrated, in my opinion.
Yeah, without question. And you see that at larger schools. You see that at schools that have 90 to 100 kids show up to tryouts, that have 60 kids in a program. And that's kind of the thing for everyone to remember is, if you're a junior at Staley High School versus being a junior at probably many other high schools in our state, it just looks different. You might be a starter on a varsity team at a smaller high school, right? It's about who's in front of you, the talent depth. There's a lot that goes to that. The one thing that sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in and, I get comments from parents often, and it's also a competition thing. Like batting 350 at one school is different than batting 350 at a different school. You know what I mean? So numbers can be real misleading. It could be a hard 280 at Staley versus 400 at a different school, and I would still side with the hard 280 at Staley. I'm not saying in every situation, but high school numbers can be very misleading. So you got to be careful about judging who's the better player off of high school batting averages, high school pitching stats, because the level of competition varies drastically.
Yeah, 100%. which goes into why your job is so difficult, Kevin, because you not only have to do that, but then you have to marry it with the measurables that these kids are showing at their showcases, right? You have kids popping 100-mile-an-hour exit velocities, but they can't hit over 200 at the varsity level at some schools, right? Then you have the kid who will swim in the mid-80s, but he's a varsity impact player just because he can flat play the game. So you don't get enough credit for how hard you guys have to work on your end to make the rankings as fair as they can possibly be, and you're always going to be under scrutiny.
Yeah, that's what we sign up for, so that's all right. But yeah, that is the huge challenge of it is so-and-so's exit velo is a little higher or whatever. There's so many factors that go into it, and it is a balancing act. And I'm always the first one to say, like, you put 10 baseball guys in a room, like it's going to be 10 different, slightly 10 different opinions, So it's what it is.
Yeah. I mean,
But
sorry about that. You're right. You're right, Kevin, when it comes to the numbers part of it. I'm guessing when you guys drop these rankings, there's probably going to be 9 to 10 schools that we play in the state of Missouri that are ranked in any class. And that's not to mention the 3 teams we're going to play in Arkansas over spring break weekend, Valley View, Conway, and Cabot, which are all perennial powers in Arkansas. Not to mention we got to go play St. Thomas Aquinas, right, on the Kansas side. So it's like
we have this conversation all the time. I firmly believe this. Now, not every school's in that position where they have the depth to go challenge themselves as often as you guys do, but I'm a firm believer if you have a team that is capable of, or you think is potentially capable of making a Final Four run, winning a state championship, you need to challenge that team. No one ever wants to lose a baseball game. You go into every game wanting to win, but if you go through that undefeated, like it's almost probably says something about your schedule. It's almost impossible to go undefeated if you're going to put a treacherous schedule together. You're going to drop the ball. Heck, USA lost to Italy last night.
We can talk about that at the end.
I think you're doing yourself a favor and putting yourself in position where, hey, yeah, you might, whoever you decide your number one is, you might like to toss your number one at this team, but you're not going to be able to that game. You're going to have to trot out your number 3 or 4 pitcher. And although that might not be as fun for you that day, you're going to be really thrilled you did it when you're in a postseason game and you have to go to that kid in the 7th inning because of pitch count rule or because of whatever led you to that situation. And now that kid's been in the fire and he's better for it, from that experience.
Yeah, to go along with what you said there, Kevin, you don't want to lose in May or June to a team that's the best team you've seen all season. That's the last thing you want, right? You want to be battle tested. You want to play teams that are, as comparable, if not better, than what you're going to see at, when it is win or go home. And I think that you see from the teams that are perennially in the state championship and in the Final Four in Class 4, Class 5, Class 6. They're seeking out the best competition they can find in the regular season, and their players, their team, their program is better for it.
Absolutely,
100%.
Before we talk about a couple of preseason underclass standouts, I need your guys' thoughts on the debacle that occurred last night between the USA and Italy. What in the world was Mark DeRosa thinking? What are we doing? Do we need a travel ball dad associated with this tournament so he can text Mark DeRosa the exact runs allowed that he needs, the exact runs scored? Like, do they need someone like that? How can you not know that this is a tournament style and that there's runs allowed, there's runs scored? It's not just wins and losses. For me, that's unforgivable. It almost makes me think like this was a setup and this is all just pure entertainment. That's how bad it was, in my opinion.
Well, I don't even know how he's a manager, for one. Like he's on MLB Network all day long. We can't find somebody with managerial experience that's done this before. My son and I had that conversation first off. And then somebody on the staff, you're right, has to know that it comes down to numbers, wins and losses, runs scored, and what the tiebreaker scenarios are. I agree with you. That is pretty unexcusable.
It does show you why there is the front office guys around baseball, the guys that the baseball guys call the nerds or whatever, probably were pumping their fist like, this is why I have a job. And it does show you like it is really hard to me. Now, it's unexcusable. That cannot happen. But you almost have to have someone's job outside of the dugout telling a guy like, hey, this is what we're playing for tonight. is X. Like, you make the lineup, you call the hit and run, make the pitching changes. I'm not telling you that. That's your job. I'm just telling you it would be wise to win tonight. And if you don't win tonight, like, here are the ramifications. So yeah, that is inexcusable. And boy, I was looking at it this morning. I think they're going to be okay still, but they're going to sweat this out.
Oh yeah, 100%. They deserve to split it out after that.
They do. I could see Italy and Mexico's coaches getting on the phone today, like, "Hey, we got a chance here to do something really funny. We can make this look like a competitive game, but we can knock those arrogant USA guys out."
Yeah,
You never know. You
Well,
never
maybe
I
know.
Mark
promise.
Wilson, maybe he needs to go coach a weekend of tournament ball. You can hook him up,
That's right.
coach. Coach
That's
a
right.
weekend tournament ball, so they can break down all the scenarios.
Everyone in this tournament outside of the United States of America is rooting for Mexico and Italy to advance without question.
100%. 100%.
And that's where I go with my conspiracy theory hat. Like, not many people are going to watch the Mexico Italy game until this happened. Now a lot of people are going to watch the Mexico Italy game, right?
That's true. That is true.
Kevin, you've held some just outstanding events over the winter. Obviously, doing your Club Scout days, which I think have been very successful, and I know us personally at RBC, we love what you do there. But we wanted to highlight some of the standout guys that you saw at your preseason underclass All State or preseason All State underclass. I'll say it right. Go ahead and throw some names out. Coach and I can comment on them if we know them, but you can tell us all about them.
Yeah, I earlier our discussion got led into, and I already prefaced this by saying that the 2028 class is stacked. It is the strongest class that I have seen, at least in my opinion. Others might share a different opinion on that. And the first thing I'll say is the sophomore class is still developing. So there are kids that we may know but are not all the way finished products yet. There will be a group of kids that are, generally it's pitchers that are kind of 6'1" to 6'5", that are currently 78 to 83, that are going to turn into full-blown dudes before the end of their high school career. They're just not there yet. But the ones that have already taken this jump is pretty astounding, the level that these guys are at. And I guess we talked about the three big ones in Kansas City already, and that's how we have them right now: 1, 2, 3 in Zumwalt, Gillespie, and Patrick. And you could shake up our top 10, in my opinion. And when these kids are 21 years old, and there's really no telling how it'll turn out. There's that many good ones that I think have a real chance to make lasting impacts in college baseball and professional baseball. But a couple from these events that I'm really excited about, and this is one that could end up being the best one of them all one day. I'll start with John Caltatera, two-way talent out of Limburg, big physical guy. I don't have it right in front of me. I'm going to say 6'5". He's got true power. Not quite as natural of power as Zumwalt's, but it's like one tick below, and that is still big time power. But I really like him on the mound in particular. Had him up to 91. This is a guy that's going to be a true power arm. It will not be hard to. You don't have to squint your eyes to see this kid being a legitimate mid to upper 90s guy when he's in his low 20s. So that's where I'll kind of start out with. I know Coach Wiggins knows John well as well.
Yeah, John is. I've known him since he was a 12-year-old kid. He's always been one of the bigger kids in his age group. But he was kind of in a clunkier body. He didn't move as well laterally. He was slow-footed, but I mean, obviously very, very physical. Has always had a strong arm. And the biggest thing I've seen from freshman to sophomore year is just the increase in his athleticism and his ability to go left and right. Played a little bit of third base last year at the varsity level for Lindbergh, and had some growing pains. It's hard to play the hot corner as a 15-year-old at the varsity level. But I think with the added athleticism and the added ability to go left to right, the increase in arm strength, and just the overall growth that he's made as an athlete, I think that third base is going to be a little bit easier for him to play this year if that's where Coach Scott decides to put him, or so could left field. Knowing Lindbergh and knowing that Austin Jones is going to man first base, we're going to have to find a spot for John. Is it left field? Is it third base? Is it DH? So as a positional player, he can help them in many different ways, and then obviously on the mound, you're 100% right. It's pure power coming at you. He's spinning his breaking ball in the mid to high 2000s. The fastball's 2,500, and he is still learning how to be a pitcher. And that's the cool thing about John is he's always been able to beat guys with his velocity. And being a varsity arm as a freshman and learning that it takes a lot more than just a mid 80s fastball to beat a varsity hitter really made him grow up quickly. And the development of his off-speed pitches has been really, really good this offseason.
One thing that it just strikes me, we were talking about Keelan, one thing that makes him so special is he is already athletic in his size. Generally with those bigger kids, like I coached John at the Junior Future Games, and he was especially clunky, but you looked at his feet and you're like, my God, what size shoe is that kid wearing? It's like at least 2 or 3 sizes bigger than mine, and this kid's in 8th grade. So he's still catching up to his body, and I would anticipate his athleticism continue to improve and catch up to his body over the next couple of years. Another one of my favorite bats in the state that kind of slots in right behind those big three in Kansas City is Brady Rallo, left-handed bat over at CBC. Also gets up on the mound and can pitch, but I view him more as a positional player. But this is one of the more advanced bats in the state, and one of the guys that started varsity on a big school, Class 6 school, at CBC, but really big fan of Brady Rowell at the plate, especially.
Coach, have you seen him?
No, I haven't seen him.
Okay, yeah, he's impressive. To start at CBC as a freshman, that just tells you right there how talented he is.
Yeah, you had me at left-handed bat. I was in.
You're right.
A couple others. Chase Owens is a super talented guy. It's one of them are more, toolsy. If we're looking behind the plate here, Chase Owens is a big physical guy out of Farmington that we've seen for a number of years. And, this group, I've mentioned how talented they are. They won our Junior Future Games event, which our Future Games event is basically an exhibition of talent. And, pitchers go out, throw 2 innings. We're just, I'm going to say the word showcasing for these college coaches and even some pro scouts. The Junior Future Games is a real tournament. You try to win. This group won that tournament. They beat California, Texas, Florida. So that's the level these dudes are playing at. And Chase Owens was one of those players. He's a two-way guy. I think he's trending more as a positional player, but can also get up on the mound and run it up at about 90 miles per hour as a sophomore. He's one I really like. I really like Ryan Caffey out of Kirkwood. A tick below these other dudes that we're mentioning in terms of metrics, that he doesn't have otherworldly metrics, but high baseball IQ, in my opinion, the best receiver in the state, block and throw, kind of a classic catcher, left-handed bat. He's taken a good step forward physically. I like him. I think he projects to be a Division I catcher. Calvin Stanich, Stanczyk. Boy, I get nervous when I have to pronounce everyone's last name in real time. But there's one of the more toolsy guys, like all around. If we're gonna just run a punt, pass, and kick competition or a prep baseball showcase, Calvin's one of those dudes that's going to go out there and be at the very top of all of it. Play multiple positions on the field, but shortstop and a tooled up dude can run it up into the triple digits during BP. One I really like, and one more sophomore I want to hit on, Charlie Willie. Over at DeSmet is a highly projectable, kind of a lean, athletic frame, 6'3", 6'4", two-way guy. I think he's really interesting on the mound, though, up to 86, and he's one that I look that might take a pretty big jump. And thinking about the guys from last year's class that were in this position, like I'll hit on some of these Kansas City kids that Coach knows, like an Evan Loftus or Evan Magnuson. He reminds me like where those kids were a year ago, and now Evan's was up to 94 earlier this winter. Last year he was, mid 80s, low to mid, 83, 85. So this stuff will happen quick for him. And one freshman I want to touch on that I think might have one of the best pure hit tools in the state, regardless of class, is Ben Delick. This is a freshman that everyone needs to know. He's over at Oakville High School. I'm looking forward to – Oakville has a pretty nice team this year, some big players. It's going to be interesting to see what type of role he carves out over there. But that's one of the more advanced left-handed bats I've seen. I kind of I'm going to go with the Chase Utley comp on him. It's not going to be a shortstop. Probably going to be a second base, maybe third base. But the left-handed bat is real. That's one of my favorite freshman bats that I look forward to seeing if he makes an impact on the varsity level this year.
Yeah, Coach, you're talking about a lefty with a sweet swing that's going to play at any level. That's Ben Delick. He's got a highly advanced approach. I think he's going to be a hit first guy versus a big power guy. The power's there, but he's not an overswinger by any means. And he's such a steady hitter. Like when you watch him take BP, whether it's off an arm or a machine, barrels up the middle. He's not over rotating, pulling off the baseball. I know he made the varsity team at Oakville. I would assume he hits somewhere towards the top of that lineup. Probably in between Simikaitis and Lake, I would assume. But I mean, he's hitting atop the lineup for Wow Factor National this summer. And, that's legit, right? When you're talking about, he's probably the only Missouri kid on the Wow Factor national team, and he's hitting atop the order. He is an elite special talent. And you're right, Kevin. Everyone's going to know who he is probably by the end of this year, just given how professional of a player he can be when he's on the field.
He's interesting and different than these other kids that we've talked about. Like, we'll talk about Keelan Zumwalt, you're like, oh, wow, batting practice, balls in the parking lot, or a Cam Gillespie, athleticism, Brady Rowell or Crew Patrick, like, 100-plus mile per hour exit velo, really strong. Delick is different than he can do a lot of that. But just the approach in the way he takes his at bat, it already looks like a professional. And I do not throw that around lightly. I would not say that about other very talented players. So, you get excited about some of those other kids. It's more tools based. I'm more excited about, and Ben has these tools, but I'm more excited about just how he goes about in that bat that really separates Delick, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I've seen.
Go ahead.
Because I've seen them both up close for so long, I liken Ben to Nolan Sissom. I think that's a very good comp. as an offensive player is he's not going to wow you with exit velocities or batting practice home runs. At least he wasn't as a freshman or a sophomore. But the professional at bat ability, anyone who knows of Nolan, obviously, Coach, you do because you played him in the semifinal game. That's kind of the comp that I see.
Yeah.
I'll take that all day long over a lot of power, in my opinion, especially with the level of arms that we see. You're probably just not going to barrel these guys to death, right? We got to run up pitch counts and elevate and foul off pitches and have competitive at bats and 6 or 7 pitch at bats to run these guys up and try to get them out of there in the 4th or 5th inning, right? So I love that approach. I'll take a team full of those guys over, guys that are trying to hit the ball over the fence all the time.
For sure.
Let me give Coach a quick scouting report. I want to throw a Kansas City name of a sophomore arm that I'm a big fan of over at a rival high school of yours, Liberty High School, the Kansas City Liberty. Emery Detweiler is going to be a name to watch out for. High pitch ability, really good secondary offerings, curveball. And right now, velo, and I'm going to say a tick short. He's ahead of where most sophomores are in the grand scheme of thing. But right now he's hanging out in the 83, 84 range. But he's a guy that we're going to know. And that last name should ring a bell to people. That's Ross Detweiler's nephew, I believe, who former big league pitcher. But Emery Detweiler is going to be a name to know on the mound here in years moving forward, I would think.
Probably soon. The way that Coach Bragg does it, he'll probably be up there at some point on the varsity pitching. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
So lots of talent, and I'm leaving plenty of guys out that we could go forever on this, but the Missouri high school baseball is in a phenomenal position right now. I really like the steps that Misha has made in recent years to allow extra practice time. I think this is showing up. I don't think this is – I think part of it is just it does go in waves. There's some randomness to this. Like there are stronger classes, there's weaker classes. I know coaches talk about this, but I certainly see it. There's years when Kansas City seems to be a little more talented than St. Louis. There's years when St. Louis is a little more talented than Kansas City. There's a year like right now when the Springfield area is loaded with talent. It does kind of go in waves, but I think more than that, like I think some of these adjustments that we've made and putting a little more focus or giving the coaches a little more opportunity to work with their players, I think this is the fruits of those labors. I hope shining through, and we won't know for a couple of years. I'm hoping I continue to say, dang, this freshman class or this sophomore class. But to me, it is noticeable, and it's. I don't feel like I'm just getting excited about the group of kids.
Yeah, the true test is when you get those kids out on the field against varsity competition, and that's when you can really tell right there is, okay, did that kid that showed well at this event, can he play? And that's the exciting part for me with spring coming around is we finally get to see these kids out on a baseball field playing the game of baseball, which is significantly different from being indoors on turf in a batting practice setting. And that's what I'm most excited about, right? Those 92 to 94s in a 15-pitch bullpen with no hitter in the box. Are those 88 to 90 with command? Are those 84 to 86 by the third inning and the ball sprayed everywhere? That's where it gets really fun. Me being a pure baseball guy of seeing these kids actually get out there and compete.
Yeah.
Honestly, coaches, I think that's maybe the most important part of the job I do, because it can be really dangerous watching a kid throw a workout bullpen or taking around a BP inside. If you don't get out and watch these players perform, I could call Coach Josenberger or Coach Wiggins like, hey, this is going to be the best player you've ever had. He hits the ball 1,000,000 miles per hour. He has the dirtiest slider, but we all know that in-game is different than inside BP controlled bullpen session or batting practice session. Got to be able to do it in game. And I feel like getting out and seeing guys perform live and seeing how they do under the fire says way more about a kid than a workout does.
100%. Even going back to the tryout piece earlier, we tracked bullpens for the 3 or 4 weeks, for the last 3 or 4 weeks before the week of tryouts. And we tracked them during live ABs, and we also tracked them when they were just in the bullpen to see what the difference was in velos and strike percentages and all those different things. So that's 100%. And one of the things we talk about a lot is there's a difference between a varsity athlete and a varsity baseball player, right? We have a ton of kids that are varsity athletic enough to play as an athlete, but they're not a varsity player yet, if that makes any sense, right?
100%.
The ability to be able to make an adjustment at the plate, to be able to hit a velo, to be able to hit a breaking ball or foul it off, or situational awareness or baseball IQ. And we talk, I've had several conversations. Hey, man, you're a varsity athlete 100%. You can run, throw, do this, but the other things, intangibles, are what you're missing that's going to not allow you to be able to compete right now at this level. And those are the things that we need to see you refine.
Love it.
That's great. Yeah, that's gold. We're all in agreement there. Gentlemen, we do need to wrap up. This has been a great talk. We've got a lot done, Coach. I'm excited to follow the Falcons this spring and see you guys follow up on a heck of a season last year. It sounds like you have a lot of the pieces to be as successful. And Kevin, can't thank you enough for what you do for kids and programs, high school, club in our area. It's definitely made baseball in the Midwest better thanks to you and what PBR does.
I appreciate it, and good luck this final week. We got, 1 week from today is opening day. Best of luck to all the coaches with this final week of preparation, and it's going to be an exciting spring, I feel like.
Coach, are you in a jamboree on Saturday?
Yes, we are. We're over at Creekside this Saturday. We got
Awesome.
Liberty North, Blue Springs, and Smithville, so we should get
Even the real games, even the fake games are heavy hitter.
Those 3 inning games are going to be hot.
They're going to be real hot. It's a good chance to give some guys some experience and kind of solidify some roles. So we're looking forward to it. The weather's supposed to be awesome.
Wonderful. Well, hey, everyone, for Youth Baseball Midwest, this was Baseball Talk. I'm your host, Dave Wiggins. Thanks to Kevin. Thanks to Coach Josenberger. Almost messed up your last name. Sorry about that. For all you, we'll see you next time.